Hey gang, welcome back. Today we're going to continue our studies of the 1-4-5 minor, playing through the chord changes in the key of B minor. Let's do it. All right, so this would pretty much wrap up our little series going through all 5 patterns of a 1-4-5 minor chord progression, starting with the chords, then the triads or the arpeggios, chord tones, if you will, pentatonic scales, and then finally into the full scale. Okay, so we started out in pattern 2 just because of where it lands on the neck, and in this case we're going to start it with pattern number 1 because that's pretty much where we left off at. We left off at pattern 5, so the next one is pattern number 1. There's our B minor chord. That's the C shape, and like I mentioned before, it's not my favorite shape, so I might play the chord like this. All right, and then we have our E minor as our 4 chord. That's going to be a pattern 4. And then F sharp minor, that's pattern number 3. And then we're back to B minor again. Let's take a look at those arpeggios. Those are the chord tones. We'll start there, and then we'll run through our exercises, our process in trying to find some of these in the heat of the battle. All right, so pattern number 1 of B minor, we start with the root tone here. This should be a familiar shape by now. 1 flat 3 5. And then the top octave, 1 3 5 here. Also play the 5th on the low E string there. All right, then pattern 4 for our E minor. And then pattern 3 for our F sharp minor, just reviewing them before I go ahead and turn on the track. Now again, our track is 2 measures of B minor, 2 measures of E minor, 2 measures of F sharp minor, and then a turnaround back to B minor, another measure of F sharp minor, and then the whole process starts all over again. For this first exercise, we're just going to play all these arpeggios in quarter notes from the root tones just to establish the shapes. Let's try it. Okay, so that's a really good way to start. Real simple from the roots, but we don't want to become married to those roots. We don't want to have to just depend on just the roots. We want to also be able to change chords within the chord, right? So let's do that exercise again, but this time we're going to look for the nearest chord tone of the next chord that's coming, and we're going to continue on whether we're ascending or descending, and just try to find the chords from other notes other than the roots, the 3rds, the 5ths, and the 7ths, right? We're looking for the nearest note of that next chord that's coming. Let's try that. So if you've been doing this, you know that that's not quite as easy as it seems. It does take a little bit of practice, right? But that's really where the rubber hits the road, because we want to be able to see and connect those chords with the shortest distance possible, right? That's kind of more musical rather than always kind of going back to that low root tone. All right, let's do that. Let's take those first two exercises, and now let's add in some flavor. Let's try to mix up our phrasing a little bit, mix up the arrangement of the notes, try to play a little bit more musically, but also trying to connect those chords within the chord, right? Not being a slave to that root tone. Let's try that. All right, just trying to make a little bit of music with just the chord tones or the arpeggios. And you notice I never play those arpeggios like you would typically hear, because that's not what my goal is. Don't get me wrong, I like that, and I do practice that sometimes, those sweep arpeggios, and in a rock context, it's super fun, it sounds amazing, but that's not really what we're doing here. We're really thinking of it as chord tones, not that typical arpeggio type sound. All right, now what we can do is we can actually look for the pentatonics. That would be a good option here, right? So we've got pattern 1 of our B minor pentatonic. Then pattern 4 of our E minor pentatonic. And then our F sharp would be pattern 3. And that should get us through the chords really nicely too. Let's try that. All right, cool, and of course we have the full scale. So if you already know that minor scale, that's great. The whole point of doing these exercises, though, is to find where the chord tones are. So now that we've established that via some of these exercises, now we can mix in the whole scale, and we have confidence that we're going to land on a good note when that next chord comes, even to the point where we can even add some chromatic notes and stuff like that. So again, this is just the beginning. If we extrapolate this onto other chord progressions, tougher chord progressions, non-diatonic chord progressions, this is where this really starts to come in handy. So, you know, it's good, just roll up your sleeves. You don't have to do this forever, 10 minutes a night, right? And for a couple of weeks, and trust me, this will be, you know, money in the bank. Maybe go back and review every now and then, but once you get past that first initial phase, this whole process you start to see it over and over again, and it becomes more and more familiar. All right, so that concludes our 1-4-5 minor chord changes in the key of B minor, finishing off with pattern number 1, and we have many more to go. So we'll start doing some other typical chord changes that we might see in other styles of music, and it's extrapolating the same process onto it. All right, until then, I'll see you next time. Cheers.